So just to summarize a little bit, I thought it was particularly interesting to hear both from a European perspective, where we have very dense cities and lots of fiber around, particularly by 2030, there's supposed to be fiber everywhere. And yet it is essential, there is a need for the upper 6 gigahertz per IMT as outlined by Eric. But the majority of the world's population, of course, don't live in these types of countries. They live in countries where there is very little fiber around and where the main means of communication is wireless, i.e. mobile. And there we had the view from Nigeria, and I think the answer is pretty resounding. Using all the spectrum for Wi-Fi would be pointless because there's nothing to connect it to. So the balanced view, the lower part of the band for Wi-Fi, which incidentally more than doubles the spectrum for Wi-Fi, and then the additional upper 700 megahertz for IMT. And this is relevant, as I said, not just for Africa, but of course also for the Americas. I mean, the US has taken this different decision, but particularly anywhere down from the Mexican border, I'd say, that is particularly relevant. So I now like to ask the panel members for the 6 gigahertz panel onto the stage. So we have Eric, if you join us here. And we have Tarek Alamari, and then we have Ulog Asimov. I hope we're all here. So we have a pretty big panel. And we have Lunchagon Wuttisakyuni, who is an associate professor from Electrical University of Thailand. And we have Marcello Rutte, director of telecommunications from Subtel, Chile. And Alessandro Goya from Vodafone. And Luigi Ardidotto from Government Affairs, EMEA, Qualcomm. And then we have Ulrich Dropmann, head of standardization from Nokia. So if I can ask you to take your seats. Actually, maybe I think I should be, well, I'll be here. Or you go here. I'll swap over like that. Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And maybe I can start with you, Eric, and following on from the insights you gave us in your presentation. I mean, we have noticed some divergent views from European administrations. Do you expect that CEPT to be able to formalize a common position at WRC 23 preparation process for Europe? And considering the recently approved RSPG final opinion for WRC 23, which could be the key element for possible compromise?
Thank you, Stefan. And yes, I'm always optimistic. First, the RSPG, which is European Union side that I am sharing, has published one opinion on the EU position for WRC 23, which is presenting the, say, compromise solution at the European level. You know, you had some countries which were more leaning towards Wi-Fi, some which were more leaning towards IMT, like us. And the compromise is simple. We will accept the IMT identification while not advocating for it. So that has been already translated at the CEPT level with something maybe which is less political and something more practical in terms of what could be the revision of the radio regulation. But basically, it means that if nobody in Region 1 would like to have IMT identification, we would manage in Europe to decide whether we want Wi-Fi or IMT at a later point of time. But if some countries are interested, and I could hear at least Nigeria was interested, if we have some other countries which are interested in Region 1, we want to move together with them to define the conditions to protect the satellite, which is something also which is important, and to define something which will enable an ecosystem in this frequency band. So that will be the basis of the European position which is still to be turned into a European common proposal, which will be adopted either in May or in September, probably in September.
Thank you very much, Eric. That's certainly very encouraging. And also, of course, in Region 1, we have the position of the Arab states. And I have next to me here Tariq El Abadi, the Executive Director of Spectrum Affairs for the Telecommunications and Digital Government Regulatory Authority from the United Arab Emirates. And a key question is always demand. So is there demand for additional mid-band spectrum for 5G and its evolution in your country?
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this question. First, I'm happy here to join you in this session. Of course, in UAE, as I mentioned earlier also, that all of the spectrum that been allocated for mobile IMT and been assigned to, we have two operators assigned them to them, all of them, almost. And starting 700, 800, 900, 1800, even for the 5G, for the 3.4 to 3.8, been assigned totally to both operator. This year also we are planning to assign 1.4 because of some issues that we are having with the handset. And now as an Arab League with ASMG, we have already agreed in which channel plan and been announced. And now we are coordinating also with the mobile vendors to build devices for the Arab League also in this band 1.4. But coming back to your question, yes, we did our study also and trials on different bands, but mainly for 60 gigahertz to see the requirement of spectrum for suiting the requirement that we are having in our country by our government for the coming years. And we found that, yes, we do have a requirement for extra spectrum to fulfill the requirement of our government, our operators. And this study has been done also with our telecom operators. So we do have usage in this 6 gigahertz. We may not, till now we didn't decide a full decision for going to 6 gigahertz for IMT. For the lower band, we already have, as UAE, one of the first country has assigned for Wi-Fi in the lower band 60 gigahertz. But for the upper band, still this is going on. We want to make sure that protecting the existing services, one of them FSS. FS also, we are having a lot of usage there, but again by the operator itself. So they may do something by themselves in order to live with each other. If conference, this is our opinion, that if the conference has not fulfilled the IMT requirement, it may have some problem in future with regard to the quality of service and fulfill the requirement for the IMT in future. So basically, as UAE, yes, we are looking forward to have more spectrum. But again, we will put our decision as Arab Spectrum Management Group also after the CPM. We will have a meeting in September, and during that time, we will be putting our final position. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, for you, this seems to be an important topic, but you mentioned harmonization. So in that context, maybe a follow-up question. What role do you think WRC 23 and the ITU harmonization can play in opening the opportunity for ASMG countries to better make use of that 6 gigahertz band?
Well, of course, harmonization is important for us also. And we can, as ITU or an Arab region, playing big role in order to make this spectrum available. Now, frankly speaking, in the last week we had ASMG meeting. Still, we have plenary position on 6 gigahertz because we have some different views on 6 gigahertz. However, I'm sure that coming meeting after the CPM, and because most of the countries in the Arab region are in favor of having 6 gigahertz. But again, that's all they are waiting to see the studies and a result of the CPM. This is one. Second, all of them, they are also want to have a spectrum, enough spectrum for the future requirement of IMT. Right now, in order to reach to the requirement, which our study shows that it required 2 gigahertz of bandwidth, and as we said, we had studied this one, and we can share with you already. Last week we had that one with, shared with all, and we can share it to you, show you. Arab countries also found that yes, it may require to have more spectrum and IMT, but we do have also one thing in our regional group, a policy. If 50% of countries was attending the last meeting, supporting a position, and no more than 25% against that position to become Arab Common Proposal. Yeah, so we rely on that one also to see it, and that is how we can come up with this position and put in WRC. Of course, WRC will have a big challenge on this issue because we do have different views from different countries and different region. However, today, as I'm hearing in this meeting and of course in the conference, Mobile World Congress, there are a lot of support for 6 gigahertz for IMT. But of course, as Eric said, that we do need to have some condition also to protect FSS. As I said, in UAE, in some countries, we do have FSS. FSS need to be protected, and we are willing to negotiate also how to protect those FSS.
Great. Yeah. So the question of demand or need is, of course, an important one. And moving east now, I'd like to introduce you to Ulugh Azimov, the Deputy Director for Scientific Research Center under the Ministry of Digital Technologies in Uzbekistan. You're responsible for the WRC preparation for your country. So again, on the demand side, is there a need for additional spectrum for 5G and its evolution in your country, also considering the competitive telecoms market in Uzbekistan?
Thank you, Stefan, for this question. Currently, Uzbekistan has allocation 300 megahertz in the C-band and 90 megahertz in the 700 megahertz for the development of the 5G networks. The first implementation, the first implementation of the 5G network was carried out 2021 in Uzbekistan. Also, due to the technology natural procedure, it's possible to use. It's possible to aggregate 3G and 4G frequencies, but to implement the ITU requirements for IMT 2020 in the telecom market of Uzbekistan, it's necessary to have enough continuous band for 5 mobile operators of Uzbekistan. In this context, the identification of upper 6 gigahertz for IMT at WRC 23 would be part of the solution to the high demand for mid-band spectrum in the Uzbekistan and the region as a whole until 2030. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So there's also a demand in your region, and in that context, you're of course steeped in the WRC preparation work. What is your view? Will the RCC recommend an IMT identification in that band?
Thank you for this second question, Stefan. First of all, answering for this question, I would like to inform you I don't have the mandate for presenting the position of the RCC in this issue, but I can comment on the preliminary position of the RCC countries, which the Communication Administration of Uzbekistan supports in the part of upper 6 GHz. The RCC position in general is to identify this band to IMT at WRC 23 with specifications that would allow large-scale deployment of the 5G and next generation while protecting the primary services, especially fixed services and fixed satellite services. What about the commercialization? Commercial use of this spectrum in RCC countries is likely depend on various factors, such as the availability of the spectrum in the lower and upper mid-band, and the level of implementation of the technological neutrality in the RCC countries. They're using the possibility of use available spectrum for 5G, market development, and a number of operators that plan to implement 5G. Commercialization of this spectrum, upper 6 GHz, giving these factors, can be expected from around 2026 for countries with limited C-band availability and high market demand, and to 2030. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So here you can see that actually the slight differences between the region. You highlighted the lack of C-band availability, which further increases demand for that 6 GHz spectrum. So we are further widening this, and we're now moving over to Chile. And so we have here Marcelo Rutti, Director of Telecommunications Fund for Subtel Chile. And so my question for you, Chile is a pioneer in 5G in Latin America. So you're in some ways at the forefront there. And with the recent bidding process, which was a tremendous success, which ratified Chile's leadership in broadband and connectivity, what is your vision with regards to the use of the 6 GHz band in Chile and perhaps your region?
Hi, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to participate in this session. As you say, Chile has a leading role in the region, which has a 60% of penetration in fixed homes and 90% in penetration in mobile connections. Also, we have an ongoing deployment of 5G process in the entire territory of Chile, and also an auction of fiber networks with an open market position driven by the development of telecommunication, which I am in charge. And this scenario has been in part accelerated by COVID-19 and prompted the need to further review the optimization of the spectrum, which is the major asset that the regulators have to bring services to the people. Our vision here is that we need to ensure the efficient use of the spectrum in order to bring better and useful services. In this scenario, 5G has a global ongoing deployment, and the results of the adoption of the technology is something that we are waiting for. But as we know, use cases of 5G have bigger and better socioeconomic impact, especially in industrial operation. But this is driven by an ecosystem of 5G developed. On the other hand, Non-licensed Wi-Fi is going a technology that allows coverage without lower prices, which is important in a challenge of our zero digital gap agenda.
Thank you for that. And I now like to move to the APAC region, and we have Lunchakan Wuti Sikuyu, do I pronounce that too correctly, Associate Professor in Electrical Engineering from the Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. And you have done some studies, and I'd like to ask you, why do you think 6 gigahertz is so important for Thailand, and what is the key factor of deployment for the 6 gigahertz band in Thailand? I believe you have some slides.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes. Thank you for putting up the slide. This is the scene of the university that I come from. The university is located at the center of Bangkok and is surrounded by many business areas. And for Thailand, in Thailand, we are an early adopter of 5G technology. The NBTC, the local regulator, have an active policy to drive the Thailand economy by launching the 5G license as early as 2020. So it has been already 3 years since the last license auction. Before the NBTC launched the auction 2 years before, they have entered into an MOU with Chulalongkorn University to set up a 5G testbed on campus. And in this area, we are permitted to experiment on different bands of 5G for different use cases. And so far, we have been conducting several use cases, including self-driving cars, smart hospital, virtual realities, and most recently, we have been working a lot on metaverse. And today I came to thank you for inviting us here. And when we visited the MWC in the hall, we have learned that the metaverse, especially the mixed reality, virtual reality that we are starting to see in hall 6 or 7. I was very impressed by the fact that when you put on the MR glasses, you will be able to see the real world. At the same time, the digital world can be combined to the headset, and this brings many new possibilities. So in my opinion, this is more of the academic opinion, that it is important that if we're going to see the world going towards the metaverse more, using this, it's getting smaller and smaller as we can see. It is important that we can use it while we are walking. It's not like you're sitting in the room. So that means mobility become a big issue. So that is one reason that we should consider to have technology that enable high capacity with high mobility at the same time. And for us, we also, before we coming here, we have prepared a metaverse for the experiment of the 6 gigahertz on our campus. The NBTC has approved for the university to do the experiment for over 5 years, starting in 2018. And the latest experiment is being carried out this month and expected to complete by next month. We will provide these results to public, and it should be open to our own operator, regulator, and should benefit the APEC communities. So when we come here, I have an opportunity to demo the metaverse, our metaverse, to our colleagues, and it takes so much time before the metaverse can come into life. It takes like a few minutes. We download with the 5G package that we bought in Spain, and it takes about 5 or 10 minutes before the buildings and everything, the scene is coming up slowly. So this shows that the demand for capacity is really not far away, and there's no time to think of whether we need the larger band. So I think that it is not my responsibility to to discuss, but based on my personal experience coming to the MWC, so I feel that we should be looking forward to 6 gigahertz in the near future. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, particularly underlying the capacity need. And you used the keyword mobility, and that is, of course, the difference between 5G and Wi-Fi, that 5G is a mobile technology. And looking at the academic work, now moving towards an operator's view, we have here Alessandra Goya, the network systems manager and technical expert for Vodafone. Vodafone is, of course, a converged communication service provider using both Wi-Fi and mobile technology. And I wonder, what is Vodafone's view on the best use of the 6 gigahertz band offering services to customers?
Thank you, Stefan. So yes, in Vodafone, we have the largest footprint in terms of fixed broadband in Europe. And we have also, and we provide connectivity services for both consumer and enterprise customers. But we are looking also at the traffic growth in our mobile and fixed networks. And when, let's say, we have said before, let's say the 500 megahertz in the lower part of 6 gig has been allocated to the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi with the new capability and feature of Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7 will help in increase the spectral efficiency on that area. However, as I said, if we project the traffic on our mobile network, we see very clearly that in around 5 years from now, a number of sites in our cities will completely exhaust the mid-band spectrum. And if we are not able to have other mid-band spectrum to make efficiently expansion of our networks, this would impact significantly the service that we are providing today. So 6 gigahertz is the only spectrum opportunity we see in this decade, and also likely beyond this one, where we can have additional spectrum to support this traffic growth. So for us, let's say the balance between fixed and mobile is pretty clear, and the risk of the service of expansion is pretty clear. The lower part on Wi-Fi and the upper part on IMT selection is the best solution, is the best compromise in order to serve at best mobile and fixed service and, let's say, to enable the digital societies. I would like also to add that following the positive opinion of the Radio Spectrum Policy Group about the IMT identification of the upper part, we are also planning to have trials, as said before, in Europe this year in order to prove the benefits in terms of capacity of the 6 gigahertz spectrum, introducing also new services for our customers.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that mirrors what we heard from Steve, this sort of balanced view. And you're similar in the sense that you're both converged operators, so reflecting that balanced identification of the band for Wi-Fi and IMT. Next, I have a question for a vendor. We have here Luigi Ardito, Senior Director of Government Affairs from Qualcomm. So the first question, if there is an IMT identification SWRC 23 followed by regulatory decisions at national level, will there be the availability of chipsets to actually make use of this band for deployment?
So first of all, thank you for inviting Qualcomm to provide an input to this very important discussion on the 6 gigahertz. As you know, Qualcomm has an important role in the ecosystem. It is the one to provide chipset and to enable markets and to enable products. And your question is very important. We follow regulatory decisions. So if to be direct, if the regulatory decision is to allocate this band for IMT, and obviously if at the national level there is some kind of harmonization which guarantee also the volumes, of course, which are very important. Qualcomm, will serve the market, and so if there are auctions, if there are, of course, volume accumulated, Qualcomm will do what we have always done, and so we will provide chipset for those markets.
Looking at the demand side, do you see the need for 5G technology to realize the metaverse for consumers and enterprises, or is Wi-Fi enough?
Well, the response to this question is really on our booth here in Hall 3. You will see really both technologies playing together. You have basically demonstrations, 5G complementing Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi complementing 5G. Then, of course, it will depend on the use case. What the previous speaker from Thailand was mentioning is when you start talking about some mobility use cases, 5G is essential. We have at the booth demonstration of glasses which are transmitting actually from the mobile phones, which is connected through 5G to the glasses through Wi-Fi. This is the situation for today, but we can envisage also for some use cases that in some cases you also have only 5G, for example, especially with the technology, which progress and which with our Snapdragon devices, which becomes more powerful, become smaller. So it's really, complementing one with the other.
Thank you for that. I think that's a very interesting example, the complementarity and that practical example of the glasses, the handset providing the mobility version, and then the sort of personal area network, if you will, connecting from the handset to the glasses. So instead, both are essential because otherwise you create a bottleneck somewhere. So last but not least, we have the head of standardization and industry environment from Nokia, Ulrich Dropmann. And we talked a lot about ITUR and IMT identifications and so on. And perhaps a little provocative question, is the ITUR IMT identification an old concept? Is it still useful, and why?
So thank you for that question. And indeed, as my title says, I do look in standard and in spectrum. And originally coming from standard, where people say it is as slow as watching paint dry sometimes. But now looking at the ITU and spectrum process, I must say there are some paints which are dry even slower. And that is certainly also the IMT process. I mean, we are here at the MWC. This is hosted by the GSMA, and kind of as the name indicates, this is where all starts, right? By countries coming together and creating common band to be used. And that went then on from the second generation to the IMT process, and laid the foundation to the global markets and globally available spectrum bands with the further identification and of IMT bands. Of course, the process is more and more meticulous with all the different users to be considered. But of course, it's still worth. There may be 1, 2, 3 countries who could create an ecosystem without that. Okay. But looking who we are all here representing, I think in none of that we would have the ecosystem. We need to, of course, coexist with the neighboring countries, and also make sure that this then coexists with the neighboring users, that we have solutions to deal with the legacy users and to protect them. And all of that process is as important as ever for having a world that acts together to create global markets and have global communication. Thank you.
Yeah, so it still remains important, despite what we have seen that the US has taken one decision and China another, but these are perhaps the big markets you refer to who, they can just do what they like, they can go it alone. And so But perhaps as a follow-on question, or perhaps I open this question up to the wider panel about the role of ITUR and IMT identification and standardization. Is that something which you view as continuing to be essential in the future? Would anybody care to comment? Eric?
Thank you. And to start responding to this question, I think what is not questioned is the usefulness of harmonization. So IMT identification is one way to do that. There are some other way at the European level. We have also some harmonization process, but the IMT identification is a good way to achieve that at the worldwide level. So what is maybe problematic at the ITUR level is when you have some IMT identifications, which is only for 1 or 2 countries through footnote, then it's not really useful. It's just creating difficulties and having regulations specific to IMT. But in general, the process of IMT identification is, I think, useful. And then there's one other reason why IMT identification is useful at WRC level, and the 6 GHz is a good example. When you have IMT, it's somewhat slightly more than just mobile service allocation, because IMT is quite disruptive in terms of deployment, because you have a high number of base stations. You have quite powerful base stations with high EIRP. So, for example, for the protection of satellite, you have something which may become problematic. So we know for the upper 6 GHz that we have some solution that the protection of satellite is compatible with the IMT deployment, but it does worth looking at that and checking whether it's the reality. So it is also useful to have these considerations of protecting other services which are of international nature, so where each country has a responsibility to protect other countries' usage.
That is a very important point, because by definition, some of this is global, so you do need agreement. And perhaps for you, Ulrich, will IMT be able to coexist with incumbent systems, and how?
I think as Eric said, so there are, and we had the two big incumbent in that band. So the one is the satellite system, and of course we had done the study in as part of this IMT identification, which shows how it can consist under which condition it can coexist. And the other situation is the fixed links, and of course there it depends very much on how this is used in the countries and which are the users. If these are the same users that are also then using an IMT identification, like mobile operator and uses, of course they maybe have more motivation and can relocate to other spectrum more easily when we have other users which are non-mobile operators. And of course then are some situations when those fixed links are more scarcely used, and maybe then they can still operate, maybe in countries where the situation is like that, and we do a geographical separation, so then we would be able to use then this upper part of 6 GHz, like in city centers, and still have in rural areas the fixed link. So these two situations are possible depending then on the degree of usage of the fixed links. But it's what I believe is much more difficult is, not a legacy user, of course, is the coexistence in that band with then a Wi-Fi usage. So if I think that is a thought which sounds appealing, because it's kind of it has the compromise sort of in its spirit, and we appreciate that that coming from that. But I think that is very difficult to then provide the economics that we have been seen earlier. Often IMT is on the 5G deployment in this upper band of 6 GHz, and the coexistence, because of the way that the protocols operate between these two technologies. We don't believe that this is a viable solution. Thank you.
Is that the view of the panel? Coexistence of Wi-Fi and 5G is not possible? Is that Tarek?
Well, That's yesterday. We had a discussion also, myself with my director general. We said, is it possible that can both services or both technologies can coexist each other? I mean, Wi-Fi maybe indoor and outside. It's not easy, especially the aim also for IMT also to be provided indoor.
Yes.
And that is what all we are looking for. When we did our trial in UAE last year, we'd like to see how the penetration of 6 gigahertz going to the building, inside the building. It was very nice, it was good. So our aim is that, or all of us here looking at 6 gigahertz and IMT to be provided indoor. So I doubt that coexisting between two technologies in same area, same location, possible. But as I said yesterday that we had a discussion, we said we will look at it, but right now we are seeing it's not possible.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the general view, and a decision needs to be made. And I think everything is pointing towards that split of the band. But to address the other issue, the use of fixed links, Eric, you mentioned it, 6,000 in France. And of course, the mobile operators themselves are major users of fixed links. Maybe you can say a few words from Vodafone's perspective on that topic.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, we believe that 6 gigahertz will be the last mid-band opportunity we have in terms of spectrum allocation. And it's the last opportunity we have, and it's fundamental to be allocated for us to mobile in order to efficiently and let's say be able to expand our networks. I think before we discussed about the carbon footprint issue, not having that, and I think this is essentially in line of our point. 6G is still to be defined, but let's say it's pretty clear that if we have issue in terms of mid-band exhaustion on the 5G, on the current network, it means that we are in crisis of expanding and in crisis of evolving the 5G, and likely will be the same also for 6G. So this is why, let's say, our message to the regulators and the policymakers is pretty clear. So they have a unique opportunity to empower Europe, Africa, and Middle East are forefront of the evolution of the mobile networks. And really, we believe that they should not miss that such an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that. And perhaps is that also an issue in Chile or in fixed links or?
Chile, sorry, Chile has a special situation in geographically speaking, because we have so many realities. In south part of Chile, connectivity is very difficult because we have a lot of islands, mountains, and probably it will be needed in any have some space for fixed links. So I think they have to coexist in some terms.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately it's okay, because these fixed links, you probably won't need them in the cities, because this is where you have fiber, and the 6 gigahertz you need most in these dense urban areas. I'd just like to cycle back, Luchagon. We didn't get around to showing one of your slides with the result from the work you did there. Perhaps we can bring that up.
Thank
you.
you.
Can just say a few words about that.
Yeah, thank you again. Based on our plan, the NBTC already approved us to use the frequency band inside the university last year. So this month we have installed the base station and the mobile receiver, and we actually created a metaverse to demo for how the experiment is done. And I believe that we will have a little time after the break, right, to show that. After that, next month, by next month, all the results should be available, and we will be able to publish to which possibly in line with some of the slides that we see previously. And later we will, write some papers and, contribute to our local regulator. Maybe they can find this data useful for their policy. And yeah, the rest of them, there's a QR code down there. If you scan the QR code, then there will be a website link, which actually called www.internearverse.com. This website is our first virtual campus, which we, for this particular conference, we have made the metaverse to show how the 6 gigahertz measurement is conducted. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I was wondering, have any other tests been conducted on 6 gigahertz? We heard, of course, the test from Orange. Did Vodafone conduct some tests? And
no, as I said, we are planning to do this test in this year to demonstrate the benefit. I think before Orange were mentioned about coverage. That is very, very interesting what was shown. In this moment, our aim is mostly looking at capacity perspective. And so let's say we would like to show the benefits of the capacity from the mid-band perspective. But we have not done yet. I think, let's say, as I said, following the positive opinion of the Radio Spectrum Policy Group, we are planning this year in Europe somewhere. But let's say the scope is this one, is to demonstrate how much we can obtain in terms of capacity from this band in order to support the expansion and the traffic need that we are seeing growing our mobile networks.
So to follow up from that, assuming it does become available for IMT, the upper 700 megahertz, how can you describe a little more the role of 6 gigahertz in the evolution of mobile networks? Sorry.
From my side?
Yes.
Yeah, let's say, I'm repeating a bit, let's say, what I said before. We need to have a mid-band in order to allow an efficient and effective expansion of our networks. It has been demonstrated before, the effectiveness and the efficiency in terms of carbon footprint. It has been said before in terms of propagation, etc., etc. So any new technology that will use the mobile will need to have mid-band spectrum to efficiently have a capacity. As I said, it's not only 6G, it's also the evolution of 5G. Without, let's say, a proper mid-band for the evolution of 5G, let's say we arrive at a certain point that having exhausted the capacity, you cannot provide anymore the service with the same quality of experience that you have today. And even a new technology like 6G will need to have the same kind of capacity. And you cannot imagine to reuse, let's say, the spectrum as we have today. Of course, you can do it to introduce, but as I said before by the colleagues, you need capacity because the traffic will increase, the demand will increase, and you need to have other resources to support such a growth.
And would that be both outdoor and indoor use?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Absolutely.
Right. Thank you. So looking at the introduction, assuming it does become available, we had this survey when operators think this would be deployed. And from your position, when do you think it will be a reality? It's available in the handsets, it's available in other devices, it's available from smart city. What sort of time frame are we expecting for widespread use of this band? Would anybody care to answer that? Tariq, when do you expect it to be in use in the UAE?
I don't think it will be soon. As I said, that it's already that we have usage of fixed services there, but this is the band required for the future, in the near future, not the far future, near future. So availability of this spectrum, it will require some time when the system will be available and devices. But our projection that maybe within 2-3 years, that depends on the readiness of the operator, readiness of the market, that the spectrum will be available.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Eric?
Thank you. As I said in my in introduction, so we have a vision where this frequency band will really be for 6G. So I know it's not solving the issue of Vodafone, and we have the same feedback from a range, of course. But we think that the densification is a first step for accommodating the increase of traffic for 5G. So the time frame for us is clear. It's 2030, which is the planned time, at least in ITU, for introduction of 6G, and that's leaving some time for the migration of fixed service, which is used in the UK, in France, and in all countries, I think.
Yes, and of course, there's always a time lag between the identification, standardization, and so on. It does take a considerable amount of time, and which is useful in this case for the migration of incumbent services. Perhaps to come back to the Americas and a further question, we've seen a little bit of a split in the way things are going in Latin America. Some countries advocating the use of the entire band, following the US-American examples, and others advocating the split, like in Europe. What is your view? How do you think it's going? What will we see? What position will we see for WRC? Of course, it's not an item for you, but what support will there be for this band in your region?
Well, I will speak for Chile.
Okay.
We had to adjust our regulation last year, given the 500 lower band part of the band to Wi-Fi to non-licensed band, and the upper to licensed band. This is not a future implied for the use for. Because it's very difficult to take a decision right now. We are on a deployment of 5G and expecting some results of the conference of the year. So we expect that the results permit us to take a decision in order to give what people expect. And what people expect is to get connected and have an impact on economics. So probably it will depend on how 5G deploys and how this affect to the market and the industries. So I think the region is taking a similar decision in some countries and some not, but probably. The majority will be expecting will happen by the final of the year.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I don't know whether you followed this. Of course, Mexico reversed an earlier decision to follow the US and said, well, we looked at this again and are thinking we would support IMT in the upper part, but they don't have to make this decision yet, but at least they have not made the decision to exclude the use of IMT in that upper part of the band. So as yet, this is quite likely to become a global band, and then with that we get the economy of scale everybody is looking for. So with that, I'd like to thank the panel for your contribution, and perhaps we can thank them in the usual way. Thank you very much.